The sun cast a fierce, golden blaze over the sprawling amphitheater, its rays dancing upon the gleaming helmets and polished armor of the gladiators poised below. A wave of anticipation rippled through the gathered crowd, their voices swelling into a thunderous roar that echoed against the towering stone walls. The scent of dust and sweat mingled with the faint aroma of roasting meats from distant market stalls, weaving an intoxicating atmosphere thick with tension and excitement. Here in the vast Colosseum, every heartbeat seemed amplified, every glance sharp with the promise of spectacle and danger. Amidst this vibrant chaos, the gladiators stood as figures of legend, some seen as fearless champions, others as mere entertainers or tragic pawns of fate. Their lives, cloaked in mystery and myth, beckoned curiosity. Were they only slaves fighting for survival? Or were they heroes who chose this brutal stage for glory and honor? As the crowd's chant rose, drumming like the beat of war drums, the stories surrounding these warriors stretched beyond the sands of the arena into realms of truth and misconception. Today, we step beyond the roar and glare to unravel the secret lives hidden beneath their armor, the myths that history has spun and the realities that pulse beneath. Together, we will journey into the world of Roman gladiators, where courage met spectacle, and every shadow told a story waiting to be heard. Step into the blood-soaked sands of the arena, hit subscribe and uncover the untold stories of Rome's fiercest warriors. The sun hung high above the Colosseum, its fierce light scattering across the polished helmets and shield rims, making each gladiator gleam like a statue carved from bronze and fire. The air thrummed with anticipation, thick enough to taste, a mix of dust stirred by thousands of eager feet, mingled with the faint scent of sweat and leather. From the stands, the crowd's roar surged like a tidal wave, rippling through the vaulted passages and spilling into the arena below. It was a sound both wild and precise, a living pulse that seemed to fuse with the pounding of gladiators' hearts beneath their armor. Here, beneath the shadow of ancient stone arches, warriors prepared to dance a deadly ballet, but beyond the spectacle lay layers of stories often overshadowed by myth. The popular image cast gladiators as nothing more than desperate slaves thrust into combat by cruel fate, but the truth holds more color and complexity. Some were indeed prisoners, bound by chains and circumstance, yet others stepped forward willingly, drawn by the promise of glory, riches, or a chance to rewrite their destinies. Imagine the bustling streets of Rome, where hopeful young men, their faces flushed with dreams, approached Laniste, the trainers and managers, offering their strength and spirit in exchange for a life on the sands. These contracts were not always marks of despair, but sometimes keys to a new world of honor and adventure. It was a choice, daring and dangerous, made in pursuit of something far beyond mere survival. As twilight deepened over the city, the clang of metal and the rhythmic thud of feet echoed from the ludi, the gladiator schools, where these daring souls were forged. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and leather, mingled with the gritty dust kicked up by relentless training. Here, behind fortified walls, the promise of glory was hammered into flesh and spirit. Gladiators were more than mere fighters. They were symbols of strength and spectacle, living embodiments of Rome's might and fascination with heroism. Their armor gleamed under the sun as they moved with a purpose that entranced the crowds beyond the arena, embodying a world where danger danced with fame. The allure of the gladiator was woven into the fabric of Roman life, heroes celebrated in mosaics, poets singing their deeds, and citizens eagerly lining the Colosseum's stone steps, hearts pounding in unison with the clash of swords. These warriors were entertainers as much as warriors, their battles crafted to thrill and captivate, each encounter a finely tuned drama where courage met calculation. Their mystique extended far beyond the blood-stained sands, wrapped in legends whispered in taverns and immortalized in the cheers of thousands. Yet beneath the spectacle lay realities often overshadowed by myth, a blend of camaraderie, discipline, and human vulnerability that shaped their secret lives. But to truly understand these figures, we must peel back the layers of myth that have cloaked them for centuries. The popular image of gladiators as mere slaves condemned to fight to the death for the amusement of the masses is just one shadow cast upon the Colosseum's sands. In truth, their stories are far more complex, stories of ambition, survival, and sometimes even choice. Many gladiators stepped into the arena not shackled by chains, but driven by the lure of glory, the promise of wealth, or the chance to carve a name that might outlive their mortal years. Imagine the bustling streets of Rome, where hopeful young men, sometimes veterans of battle or skilled fighters from distant lands, would sign contracts with the lanista, the manager who ran the gladiator school, embracing a life of danger with eyes wide open and dreams burning bright. This reality adds color and depth to the otherwise stark black and white tales handed down through history. Beyond the roar of the crowd and the flash of steel lay lives marked by camaraderie and discipline, by friendship forged in sweat and sand, and by moments of quiet humanity rarely captured in stone or scroll. As we follow these threads, the gladiators emerge not as nameless beasts, but as men, brothers in arms who trained relentlessly, endured hardship, and shared an unbreakable bond that carried them through the fiercest battles. And so, our journey begins not just with the clang of weapons, but with the heartbeat of their hidden world behind the arena's glare. While the popular image casts gladiators as condemned slaves thrust unwillingly into the brutal spectacle, the truth weaves a more complex tapestry. Not all who donned the helmet and took up the sword were prisoners of fate. In fact, many stepped willingly into this perilous world. Picture the bustling streets of ancient Rome, where eager young men, drawn by a thirst for glory, the promise of wealth, or a chance to rewrite their destinies, gathered around trainers and agents. Contracts were signed with a mixture of hope and resolve, binding these volunteers to the rigors of the ludus, the gladiator school. These men were not merely pawns of the arena, but ambitious figures chasing fame amid the sunlit grandeur of the city. Their motivations varied. Some sought to escape poverty's grip, others craved the adulation that came with victory. The city's pulse thrummed with their whispered tales and dreams as they prepared to face the unforgiving sands of the amphitheater. This choice, this leap into danger, added a poignant layer to their stories, a blend of bravery and calculated risk, far from the simplistic notion of prisoners forced to fight for survival. And so, stepping beyond the shadows of myth, we glimpse a world where gladiators were not just victims, but also daring participants in their own legend. This revelation deepens as we move closer to their daily lives, where training and brotherhood shape them into more than mere fighters. The common image of gladiators often paints them as condemned criminals dragged unwillingly from the shadows of society, shackled and doomed to the arena's brutal spectacle. Yet, beneath this grim stereotype lies a far more intricate reality. While some were indeed prisoners sentenced to fight as punishment, a surprising number of gladiators stepped willingly into this world, driven by ambition, the promise of wealth, or the allure of glory. In the bustling streets of Rome, you could find eager young men, some desperate, others drawn by dreams of fame, signing the dotted line on contracts that bound them to a gladiator's fate. The city buzzed around them, merchants haggling, senators in togas passing by, and the distant clatter of hooves on cobblestones. This was no mere sentence, but a calculated choice, a gamble with life itself, to seize a chance at a different kind of power. The gladiator's path was not always one forced upon the defeated. Often, it was a deliberate pursuit of a fiercely coveted spotlight, a way to carve an identity in a world defined by spectacle and danger. This understanding shifts our view, revealing them as participants in a complex social game, not just victims of it. As their stories unfold, we see how this choice led to grueling preparation, forging bonds that turned disparate men into a brotherhood united by sweat and steel. Beneath the relentless sun, the ludi, the gladiator schools, buzzed with a discipline that rivaled even the legions themselves. Here, hopefuls from all walks of life converged, their reasons as varied as the weapons they trained to wield. Some were driven by the thirst for glory, the allure of their names echoing through the streets of Rome like thunder. Others sought the tangible rewards, coins heavy in their palms, enough to lift families from poverty, or to secure a future beyond the arena's shadow. These men, far from the shackles of captivity, willingly pledged their lives and limbs, signing contracts under the watchful eyes of Laniste, the managers who knew how to turn raw talent into refined spectacle. Picture the bustling marketplaces where recruiters, sharp-eyed and persuasive, offered passage into this perilous yet promising world. Young men, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, weighed the risks against the dazzling promise of fame. It was a gamble with fate, but one that many took with open eyes, embracing a destiny that, while uncertain, shimmered with possibility. This choice to step into the sands transformed the image of the gladiator, from condemned prisoner to ambitious hero, adding layers of complexity to their story that history often overlooks. The roar of the crowd awaited, but before the spectacle could begin, countless hours of sweat-soaked training and unbreakable camaraderie forged these men into legends.